No joke. That was the entire message. No apology, no explanation, just a blunt little text, like she hadn't just flushed 3 months of planning, budgeting, and emotional labor down the toilet. I paid for everything. Flights, hotels, trains, a birthday dinner at a restaurant that required a 6-month reservation, all gone. Because William, the family golden child, decided his girlfriend Evelyn was more fun. I didn't even bother responding with anger. Just 2 words, understood. And then I destroyed it all. Canceled the flights, every hotel booking, disputed the charges, and blocked every international expense. I even called the hotel concierge to inform them that my name and card had been used without my consent and to please evict the unauthorized guest, Evelyn. The girl they thought could just slide into my seat like I didn't matter. They underestimated how dangerous I could be when I finally stopped trying to be the good daughter. Let me back up. Growing up, I was the dependable one, the fixer, the responsible kid who paid her way through college while William got his first car handed to him on his 16th birthday. When I got a job offer out of state, my parents guilted me into staying close. Your brother needs you. He looks up to you. When I bought my first house at 29, guess who moved in just for a few months to get on his feet? William. That few months turned into 5 years. 5 years of rent-free living. 5 years of picking up after him like he was a child and I was some bitter stepmother. 5 years of Evelyn waltzing in with her TikTok filters and fake eyelashes, calling me Rachel the responsible like it was a slur. And the worst part, I let it happen. I bought their groceries, paid the internet bill, replaced William's cracked iPhone when he accidentally dropped it off the balcony. Mom would say, "You've always been such a helper. Sweetie, Dad wouldn't even look up from his crossword puzzle. He'll get there eventually." He'd grunt, like William was on some noble hero's journey when, really, he was playing FIFA in his boxers while I worked double shifts to cover utilities. When Dad's 65th birthday came up, I had this delusion, this stupid Hallmark-fueled fantasy that maybe a family trip could reset things. That maybe, just maybe, if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. So I booked it, all of it. $12,800, flights from Boston to Florence, a train ride through the Tuscan Hills, a cooking class for Mom, a day trip to Venice for William because apparently he loved the architecture, even though he couldn't name a single building. I even reserved a private room for Evelyn at the last minute when she found out we were going and guilted William into begging on her behalf. And then poof, the message? "We gave your seat to William's girlfriend. She's more fun." Not thank you, not sorry, just the same casual cruelty I'd learned to swallow for years. So I snapped, quietly, methodically. By the time their plane landed in Florence, the bookings had all been voided. Their cards were frozen, Evelyn's guest upgrade had been flagged. And back home, I'd changed the locks. Legally, the house was mine. They'd been squatting in it under the delusion of family loyalty. Not anymore. When they finally returned, sunburned and furious, they stood on my porch bags dumped on the stoop, yelling through the locked door. William shouted like I owed him an explanation. Evelyn pounded on the glass like a raccoon with a grudge. Mom's voice cracked from exhaustion. I opened the door just long enough to say, "You're on private property. Leave." "You're kicking us out," William demanded, eyes wide. "No," I said calmly, "I'm enforcing rent. Starting now, it's triple. Also, you're covering all bills. The extra room is off limits." Evelyn scoffed. "You can't do that." "Oh, but I can," I said, pulling out the signed agreement I'd had them drunkenly sign at New Year's under the guise of household responsibility guidelines. William's face drained. "You tricked us." "No, I protected myself." They didn't believe I'd go through with it until their bank cards stopped working. Until Evelyn's Instagram story from a luxury suite vanished. Until the Wi-Fi was shut off and the fridge was empty and they realized I wasn't playing a role anymore. I wasn't the fixer. I wasn't the wallet. I was done. They called me cold, said I'd changed. They were right. I was no longer willing to bankrupt my peace so they could live comfortably on my back. I started therapy. Moved into a sleek little loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and silence. Delicious. Guilt-free silence. No dishes I didn't use. No drama in the hallway. No footsteps of people who pretended to love me, only to laugh the second I turned my back. Sometimes, I get messages from Mom, "We're still family," or from William, "She left me. I have nothing. and I don't reply. Not because I hate them, it started with silence. Not the kind that's peaceful, like a slow Sunday morning. No, this was the tense kind. The kind that hisses around the edges. The kind that makes people itch. After I locked that door in their faces, the group chat went from lively chaos to eerie quiet. For 3 days, no one said a word. Not even Evelyn, who usually couldn't go 6 hours without tagging someone in a meme or posting about manifesting inner peace while squatting in my kitchen eating the groceries I paid for. I didn't reach out. I didn't check in. I didn't even scroll to see if they were safe. I knew where they were, stuck on my front porch with dead phones, no Wi-Fi, and a serious shortage of people willing to bail them out. I had removed myself from the role of emergency contact, therapist, and free Uber, and suddenly the world got very, very quiet. Then the storm rolled in. Day 4. A long rambling voice memo from my mother. Rachel, this isn't who you are. You've always been our rock. Don't punish your father because of Evelyn. He didn't even know she was taking your seat. I didn't even finish listening. I tapped delete before she could sneak the word sacrifice into it. They always loved that word as long as it was mine, not theirs. That same night, I got an email from a shared family login. We're having a tough time with the rent increase. Can we talk? Talk? Now you want to talk. Where was this energy when I was footing the entire travel bill and sleeping in a converted pantry so Evelyn could have the window view in Florence? I ignored it. And then the guilt war began. William tried playing the nostalgia card first, sent an old picture of us as kids, me in overalls, him beaming with sticky ice cream all over his face. Caption, "We were so close back then." Cute. I didn't answer. 2 days later, he upped the ante. Evelyn's gone. She said she didn't sign up for this kind of pressure. She left yesterday, took her stuff and didn't even say goodbye. I stared at the message for a long time, wondering what response he was hoping for. Sympathy, closure, redemption. Instead, I just turned off message previews and went for a walk. Funny how fast they shift when the perks vanish, when the fridge isn't magically full, when the Wi-Fi needs a password, when the Uber rides are no longer prepaid. I saw Evelyn's goodbye post on her socials later, a boho chic selfie captioned, "Some people don't grow, they just get bitter. Healing requires space." She blocked me the same day, no loss there. But William kept pushing. I think he genuinely didn't know what to do without me. The car I co-signed was out of gas. His job hunt had never gone past excuses. And for the first time in years, there was no one to clean up his mess. The crash came faster than I expected. 3 weeks post-Italy, I came home from work to find an official-looking envelope taped to my front door. It was from a lawyer. Inside, a formal letter claiming my parents had contributed financially and emotionally to my home and were entitled to partial ownership. They were attempting to claim residency and force a formal split. I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just laughed. Hard. The kind of laugh that comes from deep in the gut, the exhausted, incredulous, almost feral kind. These were the same people who hadn't paid a single utility bill in 5 years. The same ones who told me a house isn't a home unless it's shared. The same ones who used my guest towels like they were at a hotel and now wanted to sue me for a slice of it. I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Nina, who once got her ex-husband's boat seized in a divorce. She looked over the papers and snorted. "They don't have a leg to stand on. In fact, we might counterclaim for unpaid back rent." She was in full shark mode. I liked her immediately. As we built the case, more receipts started bubbling up: grocery tabs, Venmo transfers, emails confirming I was the sole owner. Even William's texts begging for help, confirming he wasn't paying for anything. I kept everything. Part of me used to think that made me paranoid. Turns out, it just made me smart. The best part, I didn't even need to retaliate. The universe started doing it for me. Within a month, William lost his car, repossessed after he missed 2 payments. The same Mazda I'd co-signed. Evelyn's TikTok blew up for the wrong reasons. A mutual tagged her in an expose thread called "Influencers Who Mooch," complete with screenshots of her flexing my Florence itinerary. My parents had to sell some of their retirement investments to keep up with rent, which was now legally tripled. But me, I was glowing. I changed my locks again, installed security cameras, got fresh sheets, fresh plants, fresh energy. I was alone but not lonely. In fact, I felt more seen than I ever had. There's a strange kind of power in choosing yourself after years of being chosen last. It doesn't come with confetti. No one claps for you. But something inside clicks. I started doing things just for me. Joined a boxing class, picked up photography again, took solo road trips. Every day felt like peeling off another layer of someone I didn't recognize anymore, the woman who smiled while being erased. Then came the most unexpected twist of all. A message from my cousin Sam. He was younger than me, a quiet guy who usually avoided family drama. He said he'd been watching it all unfold silently, from the sidelines. I just want you to know. He wrote, "You're not crazy. They always treated you like a backup plan. I noticed. I just didn't think I was allowed to say anything. But I'm proud of you, really." I cried for the first time in weeks, not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw the full story. My whole life, I'd been trained to believe that love looked like sacrifice, that being the dependable one meant being invisible, that the best daughter was the one who said yes, smiled through insults, and funded the vacations she wasn't invited to. But I was done being their ghost. I was becoming something else. Something solid, sharp, whole. And if that made me bitter, then good. I'd rather be bitter than buried. The thing about betrayal is that once you finally name it, it starts to multiply. It was like turning on a black light in a motel room. Every inch of my past was suddenly glowing with things I hadn't wanted to see. Not just the obvious stuff, the free rides, the borrowed money, the unpaid rent, but the casual erasures, the way my name was always left off thank you posts, the family photos where I was always behind the camera, the whispered jabs disguised as jokes. "You're the serious one. You always act like we owe you something. Rachel's great in a crisis. Thank goodness she's not dramatic like the rest of us." Translation: I was useful, but never loved. I saw it everywhere now. Like when I found the spreadsheet, it was buried in the cloud storage we'd once shared, a Google Drive folder labeled Family Planning. Cute name, right. I clicked it by accident while archiving old files for court. Inside was a color-coded budgeting doc titled Italy Costs, Dad's Birthday. I'd made the original version: hotels, flights, dinner reservations. What I hadn't seen until now was the second tab. Created by William, last edited by Evelyn. The title, Plan B, Rachel Backup. My stomach dropped. There, in neat little columns, was a breakdown of what to do if I bailed or got upset. It was basically a heist document, complete with suggestions like, Evelyn can fly out if Rachel flakes and use Rachel's card info for backup hotel in case her mood swings. Mood swings. And they were planning for my meltdown not in fear, but in convenience. Like I was a malfunctioning credit card that sometimes declined. There was even a column labeled Perks if she doesn't come. More space in room. Less drama. Better group dynamic. I sat frozen, staring at it. I had paid for the trip, carried it, created it, and they'd used me as both the safety net and the punchline. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I copied every screenshot, forwarded them to Nina, my lawyer. Then I called the only person who might still believe I wasn't crazy. My cousin Amy. Amy and I had been close once back in our 20s before she moved across the country. She'd always had an eye for detail and a sharp sense of right and wrong. I hadn't talked to her in over a year, but something in me cracked open that day. I needed someone who wasn't in the fog. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. They called it Rachel Backup. They actually planned for my breakdown, like it was part of the vacation package. Amy didn't hesitate. Send it. I did. She called me 5 minutes later, her voice shaking with anger. They're parasites. She didn't say your family, she said they, and for the first time it felt accurate. Amy offered more than sympathy. She offered receipts. You know that group chat they made last year? The one called Italy Squad that you weren't in? Evelyn posted the screenshots on her old private story. I saved a few out of spite. She sent me a dozen images. William and Evelyn laughing about playing Rachel like a violin. Mom texting, she'll pay, she always does. She wants us to be close. Dad sending a thumbs up emoji under it all. Like I was a vending machine they were shaking for one last snack. I could barely breathe. Everything I'd been questioning, every late night doubt, every maybe I'm just being sensitive moment, it was all confirmed in time-stamped, emoji-studded glory. Amy wasn't done. You know what else she said? Evelyn posted a video in Florence, said she hacked the system and traded one seat for a lifetime experience. The comments were nasty. People calling her a queen, a mastermind. They knew it was you. I pulled up the post. It was still live. Caption: when you finesse your way into a luxury Italian trip and the original planner never even boards the plane. Manifestation. Baby. The comments were brutal. Genius move lol. That poor girl though. She really said, "Thanks for the upgrade, sis." One even read, "Imagine funding a trip just to get replaced." Couldn't be me. I screenshotted every comment, every like, every petty emoji. Nina was going to have a field day. That night, something shifted inside me. Not rage, not grief, precision. I began building a plan. Step 1. I had Nina send a cease and desist to Evelyn's social media accounts citing identity fraud, unauthorized travel, and defamation. Step 2. We froze every financial account they had access to, William's car note, their shared phone plan, the utilities in my house all under my name, all now canceled. Step 3. I went public. Not internet public, not yet, but I emailed the entire extended family, a polite, detailed message with documentation attached. The spreadsheet, the screenshots, the receipts, subject what I've been covering and why I'm done. No insults, no theatrics, just facts. I signed off with, "I'm not looking for sympathy, just clarity. Going forward, I am no longer available to be used, emotionally or financially. If that means I lose people, then I lose people." The responses were mixed. Aunt Carol said I was brave. Uncle Pete sent me a $100 Venmo with a note, "You deserved better." My mom's sister, she forwarded it to my mother, who responded with one word, "Unbelievable." That was it. Not sorry, not explanation, just pure disbelief that I had finally chosen myself. William's response came 5 days later. No apology, just a desperate ramble. Evelyn left, said I was a loser. Mom and Dad are barely speaking to me. They blame me for all of it. I never wanted things to go this far. "Please, Rach, please don't go nuclear. I messed up." I read it twice, and then I forwarded it to Nina. "Nuclear," I said out loud, alone in my apartment. "Sweetheart, we're just getting started. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't fire. It's ice. It's cold, careful, and absolutely merciless." And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to be cold. I used to think revenge meant screaming. Tables flipped, doors slammed, explosions. Turns out, real revenge sounds more like a printer whirring in a quiet lawyer's office as a contract gets notarized. It smells like legal-grade envelopes being sealed. It moves with the slow, unstoppable rhythm of a freight train. And when it hits, it doesn't just hurt, it rearranges lives. Nina called me 3 days after I sent her William's message. Her voice was calm, clipped, focused. "We're moving forward," she said. "I'm filing for restitution, fraud damages, and unauthorized card use, and I've got something better." She paused. I could hear papers flipping. "They applied for a joint apartment lease 2 months ago using your income as a co-signer. They forged your signature." I blinked. "What?" "They were denied. Credit didn't pass, but the application is real. You're listed as a financial guarantor. That's felony level if we press." My hands trembled. They hadn't just used me. They'd forged me. Like I was a stamp they could press down on any form, any dream, and make it real. Without asking. Without thinking. I gave Nina the green light. No hesitation. Within a week, court papers were served. Evelyn got hers at her gym mid-spin class. William received his at the laundry job he had picked up part-time. My mother, outside her yoga studio, where she was chatting about emotional boundaries with a friend who probably had no idea she once screamed at her daughter for not buying a second fridge. The documents didn't just name them. They listed everything. Every dollar, every charge, every instance of unauthorized use. There were screenshots, receipts, bank statements. Nina was ruthless. I loved her for it. The fallout was instant. William messaged me 20 times in 2 days, all variations of, "Are you really doing this? You're my sister. We can fix this." Then came the voice note from my mother. Long, breathless, theatrical. "This is cruel. Rachel, absolutely cruel. You're turning on your own blood over a mistake. A misunderstanding. What will people think?" I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Nina. Because here's the thing. No one ever teaches you about becoming the villain in someone else's story. You stop needing to explain. They've already decided you're the problem. You might as well be the storm. Meanwhile, I started phase 2. I put the house on the market. The same one they'd lived in rent-free for years. The one I bought, renovated, maintained, cleaned. I didn't warn them. Just posted the listing. It sold in 11 days, cash buyer, no contingencies. I gave William and my parents 30 days to vacate. They tried to claim tenant rights. Nina smiled and handed them the lease agreement they signed last New Year's. It stated clearly temporary residency, no ownership rights, subject to renewal every 90 days at owner's discretion. Guess who never renewed it? They tried to get me to back down. Tried everything. Guilt, tears, rage. My mom left a voicemail sobbing about Dad's birthday. William sent me pictures of his mattress on the garage floor. Evelyn even had the audacity to text from a new number, "You're ruining lives." I almost laughed. Ruining lives. No, sweetheart. I was returning mine. But the real cherry on top came 2 weeks before move-out day. Amy texted, "Check Facebook, now." I did. My mom had posted a public update. A pity piece. Sometimes your children become strangers. Sometimes your kindness gets weaponized against you. She didn't name me, but she didn't need to. Within minutes, extended family started weighing in. I always knew Rachel was a bit intense. She was never close with the others. I'm sure Deborah did her best. And then, silence. Because Amy, sweet, beautiful Amy, posted a reply. A single screenshot? The spreadsheet? "Let's not rewrite history," she wrote. This wasn't kindness, it was exploitation. No one commented after that. The post was deleted by morning. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for years. The one I bought after my first promotion, the one I never drank because someone always needed something. Groceries? A favor? A ride? A bailout? Not anymore. I sat on my back porch, the one William once filled with empty beer cans, and I sipped slowly, watching the porch light flicker against the dark. They were packing. I could hear the boxes being taped through the window. No laughter, no music, just the sound of people unraveling their comfort. And me, I felt like stone. Not cruel, not vengeful, just done. Completely, absolutely done. Move-out day arrived. They left before dawn. I never saw their faces. Just an empty driveway, a dropped pair of flip-flops, and the faint smell of Evelyn's perfume. I didn't go out to say goodbye. I was busy setting up my new apartment downtown. Smaller, cleaner, free. No one to pick up after. No drama, no begging text messages asking for a little extra to get through the week. Just me, my breath, and the steady rhythm of life on my own terms. The reckoning was over, and in its place, stillness. Cold, beautiful. Stillness. The house was gone. Not figuratively, literally. The keys were handed over, the title transferred. The new owner already discussing repainting the shutters. It felt surreal to walk through the halls one last time, not because I missed it, but because I didn't. The silence that used to crush me now felt earned. I left behind nothing. Not a spoon, not a towel, not a single piece of me for them to stumble across. I wasn't leaving breadcrumbs. I wasn't hoping they'd find their way back. I was moving forward. My new place was the opposite of the old one. Clean lines, big windows, no guest room, no storage closet filled with other people's baggage. Just one key, one name on the lease, mine. For the first few nights, I didn't unpack right away. I sat on the floor with takeout, stared out at the skyline, and let myself feel quiet. That's the thing no one tells you about cutting ties. You expect fireworks, drama, a dramatic soundtrack, but it's just calm, delicious, uninterruptible calm. I got up when I wanted, slept in if I felt like it. The first grocery run felt like a religious experience, nothing but the snacks I liked. I didn't have to double the milk, didn't have to buy Evelyn's weird non-dairy yogurt or William's high-protein cereal he never paid for. The first night I used my own Netflix profile without finding it logged into Evelyn's TikTok drafts. Liberating. My phone was quiet. 2. Mom stopped calling after Nina sent a final cease and desist. William sent one last message, something about starting over, asking if I wanted to talk. I didn't respond. His number joined the rest on my blocked list. I wasn't punishing them anymore. I was simply unavailable. But the best part, the part I didn't expect, was how fast I started coming back to myself. The Rachel who liked night walks, who journaled every morning, who used to dream of hiking through Iceland, not just scrolling through travel deals and bookmarking them for later. I booked my first trip within a month, not Italy. That memory was tainted. I needed something colder, crisper. Switzerland. Northern lights, glacial hikes, quiet towns where no one knew my name or my family. I didn't even tell anyone. I packed light, carried a single backpack, wore a thick coat and boots that made me feel like I could walk through fire or snow. Same thing, really. When the plane took off, I watched the clouds open beneath us and thought, This is what peace feels like. Not approval, not family photos, not holidays spent pretending, just air, altitude, and me. The hotel was small, perfect. I spent the first morning drinking coffee so strong it made my eyelids tingle. The air outside was sharp enough to clear decades of clutter out of my chest. No messages buzzed, no emergencies to fix, just mountains. And on the second night, I saw them. The lights. They were shy at first, just a faint glow on the edge of the sky, but they grew, danced, shifted across the stars like someone was painting the air. I stood alone on a frozen ridge, watching them move, and I cried. Not because I was sad, because I was free, really, finally free. I whispered it aloud. I am not your emergency contact. I am not your backup plan. I am not your ATM, your emotional sponge, or your furniture. I let it hang in the air until the wind took it. The next morning, I woke up lighter, laughed at a stranger's dog, bought a silly souvenir, ate dessert before lunch. I called Amy, just to say hi. She laughed when she heard where I was. I always knew you'd go far once you let go of them, she said. That sentence stayed with me the whole trip. Because she was right. When I got back, I changed my name on every account, updated passwords, closed shared bank tabs, shredded old cards, clean slate. A few weeks later, I got a card in the mail, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, my mother's. Inside, "We hope you're happy now. You've broken the family. We don't even know you anymore." I held the card over the trash for a second, then I smiled. They were right. They didn't know me, because the version they raised, she's gone. The girl who bent over backward, paid every tab, laughed when she wanted to scream. She disappeared the day they gave her seat away to someone more fun. And what rose in her place? Someone whole. Someone who doesn't trade dignity for peace. Someone who doesn't bargain for love with loyalty. Someone who goes to Switzerland alone, drinks dark coffee, and watches lights dance across the sky without asking anyone's permission. That version of me, she's not bitter, she's better, and she's never going back. Story 2. My name is Calvin. I'm 34, born and raised in Rochester, New York. I work in cybersecurity, nothing flashy, but it pays well, and I like keeping things safe, controlled. You wouldn't guess it, but I used to be the glue holding my family together. Not by choice, out of necessity. It started 6 years ago. My dad Arthur injured his spine lifting a snowblower, his third back injury in 4 years. That was the last day he worked. My mom Dina claimed her anxiety had gotten worse and stopped going to her part-time job at the daycare. And my younger sister, Jenna, she floated between retail jobs and online business ideas that never made it past the Instagram post stage. So I stepped in, quietly. I covered their gas bills, paid their utilities, helped Jenna with rent when she got behind. She once told me she was under financial attack by her landlord. I believed her. Back then, I worked extra hours, skipped trips, put off buying a new mattress, all so they could breathe easier. That's what family does, right? I never asked for thanks. I never expected praise. Loyalty, I thought, was silent. Then came last year's Thanksgiving. I drove 2 hours after work, showed up tired, holding a store-bought pumpkin pie I hadn't had time to bake. The house smelled like burnt gravy and cheap cider. My dad was in the recliner, half asleep. My mom was wearing the same sweater from last Thanksgiving. Jenna was scrolling TikTok on the couch like her thumb had a job. We sat down at the table, food barely touched. My dad tapped his fork on his glass. "We've decided something," he said. I blinked. Mom nodded. Jenna didn't even look up. Dad continued. "We took a vote. You're no longer part of the family." Silence. My heart stopped. Then Mom. "A real son would pay without being asked." Jenna mumbled, still scrolling. "You make enough. This is your responsibility." I stared at them. No one laughed. No punchline. No hint of a joke. I stood up, every muscle shaking. "I won't pay anymore," I said. My dad's face turned red. He stood too. "Then get out." He pointed at the door. I looked at my mom. Nothing. Jenna barely glanced up. I left. Didn't even touch my pie. The drive home was a blur. The silence in my apartment was heavy. I sat on the edge of my bed, shoes still on, staring at the wall. I'd been their safety net, and now I was garbage because I wouldn't keep carrying them. That night something broke in me. Not sadness, not adage, not anger. Just stillness. 2 weeks later, the email started. No apologies, just "we need to talk." I didn't respond. Then came a voicemail from Jenna. "You've made things worse than you realize. We need your help." No, they didn't want me back. They wanted the money back. That's when I changed. I blocked their numbers, archived their emails, ghosted every mutual contact except a few friends who never played both sides. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. No emergency phone calls, no sudden Venmo requests from Jenna, no guilt-laced texts from Mom saying she was too anxious to eat. I paid off my car, bought a real mattress, took a week off just to sleep. But peace is fragile. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a text from a college buddy. A photo of Jenna moving boxes into my parents' garage. The garage. Not the guest room, not the basement, the actual garage. Turns out she'd been evicted. She hadn't paid rent in months. Her landlord gave her 2 notices, then tossed her out. And of course, she blamed him, said it was all targeted harassment. My parents let her move into the garage, ran an extension cord for a lamp and space heater. She was sleeping on an air mattress between toolboxes and old Christmas junk. Then came the GoFundMe. I wish I were joking. The title, "Our Son Left Us Behind." The description was a masterclass in manipulation. Mom wrote that I had promised to always support the family and then abandoned them without warning. Said they had no heat, no food, no hope. They made nearly $900 in the first 4 days. Mostly from distant relatives and neighbors I hadn't seen since I was 12. I started getting messages. "Is everything okay? Did you really cut them off?" Someone sent me the GoFundMe with the caption, "Is this your mom?" I didn't reply, but I took note of every name that donated. Then things got weird. An email showed up from my cousin Jason. Supposedly, he asked how I could live with myself while my family suffered. The tone felt off. Jason doesn't write like that. I checked the sender address. 1 letter was wrong. Fake. Over the next week, more came in. From an old teacher, a childhood neighbor, all fake accounts, all repeating the same lines from the GoFundMe. It was them. My own family was catfishing me, harassing me with made-up identities, trying to guilt me into giving in. I might have ignored it, but then they crossed a line. I was called into HR at work. Someone had sent an anonymous email to my company, accusing me of embezzling funds from a major client. It included fake screenshots, altered invoices, fabricated figures. It almost cost me my job. The company launched a full audit. They combed through every transaction I'd touched. 2 weeks of stress, 2 weeks of nausea, until it traced the origin of the email. The IP address came from my parents' house. That night, I didn't call them, didn't yell. I just stared at the screen. Something inside me snapped. They weren't just playing victim anymore. They were trying to ruin me, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't sleep much after that. The fake emails were one thing. I could ignore guilt trips and pity posts, but trying to get me fired, that was war. Not just against my finances, against my reputation, my ability to earn, to live. They wanted me cornered, broke, crawling back, begging forgiveness for sins I didn't commit. That wasn't going to happen. I stopped playing defense, started thinking like a threat. First, I remembered something. Jenna was still using the old laptop I gave her years ago, a cheap Lenovo with my login still active. She never changed the password. Lazy. I logged in remotely. What I found made my jaw tighten. Emails, dozens, to creditors, friends, even ex-boyfriends. One folder caught my eye, PR drafts. It wasn't about public relations. It stood for pity requests, scripts for future GoFundMe posts, drafts of fake texts she wrote as me, apologizing for hurting the family with the plan to leak them later. She had spreadsheets ranking potential donors, notes on how to manipulate their sympathy. It wasn't desperation, it was strategy. Another folder, Mom's scripts. Inside, drafts of messages written as concerned friends urging me to forgive them, sent from burner Gmail accounts. They even tried to pose as my ex, claiming I had abandonment issues. I screenshot everything, compiled it into one clean PD, labeled it "In case you come near me again." I printed 4 copies. One was mailed to my parents' house, no return address. Another to their church pastor, yes, the same man they used to justify their GoFundMe lies. A third went to Jenna's old landlord who'd reached out to me months ago after she disappeared owing rent. And the 4th I kept, for the day they tried to say it never happened. 2 days later, the GoFundMe vanished. Just gone. No explanation, no refund, no public apology. The Instagram video of Jenna crying in the garage deleted. Then the messages stopped. No new fake names, no guilt-tripping DMs, no concerned citizen emails. And Jenna. She posted a black background on Instagram with the text, "Some people are snakes." I actually laughed. For the first time in months, I laughed. Not out of spite, but because they finally realized I wasn't bluffing. But then I remembered who I was dealing with. They don't stop. They just regroup. 5 days later, my apartment building manager called me. "Hey Calvin, just checking, did you authorize someone to get a spare key?" My stomach dropped. "No. Why?" He hesitated. "A woman claiming to be your mom came in, said you were out of town and she needed to check on your thermostat. She even brought a printed copy of an old lease. My first one. Back when I listed her as an emergency contact, they didn't give her the key, thank God. But she tried." I pulled up my doorbell camera footage. There she was. Broad daylight, wearing sunglasses and a fake smile. Beside her stood a guy I didn't recognize, mid-30s. Thick build, possibly a hired hand. They knocked, waited, knocked again, tried the handle, then they left. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, because I was done. I filed a police report. Not for burglary, nothing happened, but to get something on record. I wanted a paper trail. 3 days later, it got worse. A man in a windbreaker knocked on my door. "Calvin Ford." I nodded. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside, a civil lawsuit. My parents were suing me. Not for fraud, not for defamation. They were filing under a little-known state statute, filial responsibility. It allows parents to sue adult children for financial support if they can prove they're dependent and the child neglected them. It's rarely used, almost never successful, but technically legal. They claimed I'd built a pattern of support and abruptly abandoned it. They said I endangered their well-being. It wasn't just petty now, it was public, legal. That they wanted to humiliate me, drain me. They were trying to bleed me dry for rejecting them. I sat at my kitchen table, fingers gripping the envelope. No, this wasn't about money anymore. It was revenge. I called Rachel. She was a lawyer I'd met through a friend. Sharp, dry humor, zero patience for theatrics. I read the petition. She said the next morning, "It's flimsy, but dangerous in the wrong judge's hands." I handed her a binder I'd spent hours compiling. Bank statements, texts, emails, screenshots. She flipped through it, page by page, nodded. "Good, we'll bury them." But I wasn't done. Because of the lawsuit, everything became fair game. Every fake email, every social media post, every attempt to sabotage my career, it could all be introduced as evidence of malicious intent. And then I remembered something else. That old laptop. I dug deeper. Turns out Jenna had backed up files to a cloud server, one I'd originally set up for her. Still active. There. In a folder called Jokes was a goldmine. It wasn't jokes. It was a blog draft. Title: Sympathy Hustle. How to milk the system without lying. It outlined how to write emotionally manipulative posts for donations, how to fake symptoms, how to exaggerate trauma. She even bragged about past scams. Rachel read it and laughed cold, professional. "Let's bring this to court," she said. "Let's show them what abandonment really looks like." The court date arrived quietly. No big explosion, just a Tuesday morning with heavy clouds and the buzz of city traffic. I didn't tell anyone I was going. They were expecting a no-show. Or maybe worse, a broken version of me, nervous, apologetic, scrambling for peace. They forgot who I was. I walked into the courthouse wearing the only tailored suit I owned. Not flashy, just clean, strong. Rachel met me inside with her hair tied back and a fire in her eyes. "This will be over in an hour," she said. I believed her. Across the room sat my parents. My mother wore black, as if she were attending a funeral. My father kept his arms folded, trying to look like a stern patriarch rather than a man who had spent the past year fabricating emails and asking the internet for pity cash. No Jenna. She'd apparently taken off again. Last I heard, she was somewhere in Arizona with a guy who believed in crypto astrology. The judge called us in. No jury, just a small courtroom, wood-paneled and quiet enough to hear every breath. My mother spoke first. She read from a piece of paper. Her voice shook, but not from emotion, from performance. "My son," she began, "was once kind, but over time, something changed. He became distant, cold." She talked about medical bills, about being afraid to check the mail, about Jenna's eviction and how it broke their spirit. My father nodded somberly, didn't say a word. Rachel didn't interrupt. She let them finish every single word. When they were done, she rose, and the tone of the room shifted. She handed the judge a thick folder. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "we'd like to submit Exhibits A through N, and a supplemental packet we'll call Exhibit O for obvious." The judge opened the file. The first few pages bank transfers, thousands of dollars, my name on every line. Then came screenshots of text messages from Jenna, pleading for help, thanking me. Then emails, copies of fake messages they wrote posing as other people. One was from a neighbor who hadn't lived on their street since 2002. Then the GoFundMe screenshots, with timestamps, proof that they edited the story 3 different times to increase the drama. And finally, the blog drafts. Rachel read one out loud. "If you can make people feel like they owe you their comfort, they'll give you their money too. You just have to seem sad enough." My parents didn't look at the judge or me. When Rachel was done, she closed the folder and said, "My client didn't abandon them. He escaped them." The room was still. The judge looked through the documents for what felt like an eternity. Then he spoke. "I see no legal grounds to support this petition. Not only has the respondent demonstrated a consistent history of voluntary financial aid, but the plaintiffs have actively misrepresented their situation both in this courtroom and to the public." He leaned forward. "Petition denied, with prejudice." That meant they couldn't refile, couldn't come back with a slightly edited claim. Done. But I wasn't done. Or what my parents didn't know was that the lawsuit opened more than courtroom doors. It opened the door to scrutiny. While Rachel built our case, I'd filed separate reports with the IRS and the State Welfare Office. See, GoFundMe earnings. They count as income. So does cash assistance from multiple people when not disclosed properly, especially if you're applying for state benefits at the same time. And Jenna, she'd been collecting unemployment and housing aid while receiving money from random donors. Fraud. It didn't take long. The IRS sent them a letter, then another. Their bank account was frozen pending investigation. State aid halted. My parents called Mutual Family, begging for help. No one responded, because, quietly, I'd also mailed a summary of the evidence to my Uncle Marcus, the only person in the family who still had a spine. He shared it, widely. Cousins, aunts, church friends, even an old neighbor who once offered me cookies as a kid sent me a message. I always knew there was more to the story. Good for you, Calvin. It wasn't about shaming them publicly. It was about reclaiming the truth. They lied for money. They tried to destroy me for control. And now they had nothing. Jenna returned a month later. Her Arizona romance fizzled out after the guy's crypto scam went bust. She came home with 2 suitcases and no plan. She tried to move back into the garage, but my parents couldn't keep the lights on. Their mortgage company started foreclosure proceedings. They called me, left a voicemail with just one sentence. "We hope you're happy." I didn't reply. Instead, I listened to it once, then deleted it, because this wasn't happiness. This was peace. For the first time in years, I could breathe without wondering when the next emergency would hit my phone. I moved 6 months later. New city, new job, better hours, real health benefits, a gym in the building. I started dating again. Met someone, Tasha, strong, no nonsense, wicked sense of humor, the first person I ever told the full story to, start to finish. She didn't flinch, just nodded, took my hand and said, "Sounds like you survived a cult." That hit me harder than I expected, because it was true. A year passed. No calls, no texts, not even a forwarded chain email from my dad pretending he was just checking in. It was glorious. I used to brace myself every time my phone buzzed, every time I heard the mailbox clatter. Now silence was a gift I unwrapped daily. Tasha and I got serious. She met my friends, I met hers. We took a weekend trip upstate and stayed in a lakeside cabin where I actually fell asleep to the sound of water and not the noise in my head. Work was steady. Life was peaceful. Then the letter came. Real paper. Real stamp. No return address. But I knew the handwriting, my mother's, loopy cursive with too much pressure on the loops, like she was forcing the pen to obey. Inside 3 pages, the first was familiar. Sob stories. Dad's back had gotten worse. They were behind on bills. Jenna was unreachable. She hinted that I should call. The second was passive-aggressive gold. She wrote, "We're not asking for money. We just think a good man wouldn't abandon his family, no matter what." But the third page, that's where I paused. She said she was sick. Something about her liver, no details, just that she was going to doctors and things didn't look good. She said it wasn't a plea, just an update, like I deserved to know. She ended it with, "We made mistakes. I hope you remember us kindly." I read it twice. Then I folded it back into the envelope, slid it into a drawer, and didn't mention it to Tasha for a week. Because here's the thing, I wanted to care. I wanted to be the kind of son who forgave at the whisper of mortality, who showed up with soup and blankets and emotional closure. But I couldn't pretend, not after everything. Not after they tried to ruin my name, my job, my future. I didn't respond. 3 days later, I got a message on LinkedIn. LinkedIn? It was from Jenna. Just one sentence. "They're selling the house. You win." Then she blocked me. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Win. What did she think this was, a game, a trophy match? I didn't want their house. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And after all this time, they still didn't understand that. They thought silence was a tactic. That absence was leverage. They didn't get it. Silence was the reward. Absence was healing. 2 weeks passed, then came a phone call. Block number. I let it go to voicemail. It was a lawyer. He said he represented the estate of Richard Ford, my uncle, my dad's older brother, the one who left town when I was a kid, the one everyone called selfish for never helping out. I remembered him vaguely. A sharp guy. Worked in tech, moved west, never came back. Apparently, he'd been watching from a distance. He'd seen the GoFundMe, the court records, the smear attempts. He never called, never wrote. But he changed his will. He left me everything. His house, his car, a 6-figure savings account, a letter. No strings, no guilt, no expectation. Just a note that said, "You didn't deserve what they did to you. Use this to build what they never let you build." I cried. I sat in the new house, still empty, still smelling like cedar and solitude, and cried until I laughed. Because that's what real legacy is. Not inherited guilt, not forced loyalty, but quiet, unshakable support. I didn't tell my parents, but I know they found out. The family grapevine never dies. A cousin posted about it. Wow, Uncle Rich left everything to Calvin. Crazy how life turns out. A day later, I got one final message. Email this time, from my dad. No greeting, just, "We saw what happened. I guess you always had a way of making people feel sorry for you." I didn't reply. Instead, I donated $10,000 to a local shelter that helps young adults cut off by abusive families. In memory of the son you voted out. Then I blocked the email. The last time I saw any of them was in a photograph. A distant cousin got married. Someone sent me a group picture from the reception. There they were. My mom, older now, thinner. My dad looking worn down, half his smile missing. Jenna wasn't in it. Maybe she finally realized even they couldn't be her safety net forever. I looked at the photo for a long time, not with anger, not even with sadness. Just relief. Because it was proof that life moved on for them and for me. They were still playing the roles. Still hoping to draw sympathy. And me, I was living the life they never thought I could. One where I didn't owe anyone anything just for existing. Last week, I walked through my new house barefoot, just to hear the floors creak. It's quiet here. There's no noise from someone asking for gas money, no doorbell ring with guilt behind it. Sometimes I still expect the phone to ring. Sometimes I flinch when the mailbox clicks. But then I breathe, and I remember I'm free, no longer a walking wallet, no longer the family scapegoat, just a man with peace in his pocket and no one left to steal it. Story 3. Easter used to be my mother's masterpiece. Every year, like clockwork. She'd turn the house into a pastel battlefield, ceramic bunnies on every shelf, eggs dyed in colors that didn't exist in nature, cinnamon and honey scents lingering in every corner like hope refusing to leave. That ended when she did. I was 17 when my mom left. My dad, Greg, never explained what happened. He just stopped saying her name and started drinking more coffee. That spring, there were no decorations, no bunnies, just silence and Heather. Heather moved in 6 months after the divorce, a Pilates instructor with an obsession for vision boards and vintage wine. She smiled like she was auditioning for a role she didn't quite understand. I was 26 this year. I don't know why I offered to host Easter. Maybe I missed what we used to be. Maybe I thought if I set the table perfectly, life would click back into place. So I did it all. I paid for everything: groceries, desserts, drinks, even the ridiculous pastel centerpiece Heather saved on Pinterest. I showed up early, cooked for hours, filled the kitchen with steam and noise, telling myself this is what love looks like. what rebuilding looks like. Jill helped. She's my little sister, 18 and sharp. She peeled carrots while rolling her eyes at Heather's playlist. She kept checking her phone, clearly counting down the hours until she could leave again. Dad popped in a few times, said he needed to check on the grill but never stayed long enough to actually check anything. Heather sat at the bar with her wine, complimenting the deviled eggs as if she'd invented them. No one asked how I was, no one thanked me. At dinner, the table looked like a lifestyle blog. People laughed Heather's friends from her yoga class. A neighbor who brought a store-bought cake no one touched. Dad's distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. Just before eating, Dad stood up. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd say something kind, something human. Instead, he raised his glass and said, "Remember, you're here on a quest, nothing more." That was it. Not a thank you, not a joke. Just a statement that hung in the air like smoke. Heather smirked like it had been rehearsed. Jill stared at her plate. The rest, they froze. Nobody said a word. I stood up, walked out the back door, didn't touch my plate, didn't even grab my jacket, drove home in silence. 3 days later, I called the bank and cut off the mortgage payments. I'd been helping Dad for almost a year. He told me he was struggling. I believed him. I thought I was supporting my father. Then I checked the statements. My money wasn't going to bills. It was going to Heather's spa weekends and a kitchen remodel I didn't know about. So I stopped. He didn't call, not right away. At the end of the month, he showed up at my door, knocked like he had a key that no longer fit. I watched through the peephole. Didn't answer. He stood there, said my name once, then left. I thought that was it. I thought finally the cycle was broken. I was wrong. A week later, an email popped into my inbox. Subject line, "Let's be civil." It was from Heather. Not a text, not a phone call, an email. She wrote like she was managing a dispute between colleagues, said my financial abandonment had emotionally destabilized Greg and that it was creating issues in their shared domestic ecosystem. She attached a spreadsheet. Seriously, a spreadsheet. It listed her wellness expenses, home upgrades, and emotional labor compensation like it was a business plan. I forwarded it to Jill with the subject, "Heather thinks she's the CFO." Jill never responded. She rarely does now. She's just trying to survive until college. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my dad's job, a private school where he taught English. They asked me to confirm an emergency contact. I asked, why me? They said Greg hadn't shown up to work in 2 days. His phone was off. I drove to the house. Heather answered the door in a silk robe, damp hair, no makeup. She looked surprised to see me. "He's resting," she said. I walked past her. Dad was in the den, still in work clothes from 2 days ago, staring at a blank TV. The coffee table was covered in takeout boxes and unopened mail. He didn't look up when I said his name. Heather said he had a panic event when the mortgage stopped, that he just needed space to reintegrate emotionally. I asked why no one was told. She said she didn't want to invite drama. That's when I noticed the furniture was missing. Half the living room was empty. The bookcase, the chairs, even the dining room rug. Gone. She'd been selling pieces online. While my dad unraveled in silence, Heather was flipping decor on Facebook Marketplace. I left. That night, I got another email. This time from a lawyer. Heather was suing me for emotional damages. At first, I laughed. A lawsuit for emotional damages from Heather, my father's live-in therapist/gold digger, was so absurd, it felt like a parody. But the attachment was real. It was filed through some off-brand legal site. Stamped, processed. The claims that I'd created an unsafe psychological environment by withdrawing financial support, that my behavior caused Heather significant emotional disruption, and my personal favorite, that I'd engaged in long-term emotional sabotage through resource manipulation. I sent the document to Brandon, a lawyer friend. He replied in minutes. "She's unstable, but it's legit enough to make noise. You want help?" I told him I'd think about it. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my mom. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. After the divorce, she'd moved out of state and cut ties, said she needed peace, said being near Greg was like trying to grow in poisoned soil. I understood, but it still felt like being orphaned twice. Now she was calling. She'd heard about the lawsuit from Jill. We talked for 15 minutes. She didn't cry, neither did I. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. "You should know," she said. Heather wasn't the first. I asked what she meant. She told me there had been others, affairs, before Heather, during their marriage, one during their 20th anniversary trip. Greg had a pattern, always someone younger, always someone who understood him better. But Heather was different. She was the first one who wanted the house. Mom said, the first one who didn't just want Greg, she wanted everything. Apparently, Heather had picked out paint swatches before the divorce papers were even filed. She was moving in before I was out. Mom said, and he let her. Then, her voice dropped, "Get Jill out, whatever it takes." She hung up before I could ask anything else. That night, I drove back to the house. Heather answered the door. Smug this time, like she already had her court speech memorized. You're not welcome here," she said. "Any further contact will be considered harassment." I didn't move. "Where's Jill?" I asked. "She's not here." She was lying. I heard movement upstairs. I pushed past her. She grabbed my arm, hard. I pulled away instinctively. She gasped like I'd slapped her. Jill was in her room, headphones on, half her clothes packed. She looked at me and said, "It's time, isn't it?" I nodded. We left fast. While Heather shouted something about police and restraining orders, I didn't care. I just got Jill in the car and drove. That night, I made up the guest bed. Jill didn't say much, just sat quietly, scrolling her phone. I got a voicemail around midnight. "Heather, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." She hissed, "Don't say I didn't warn you." She was right, but not in the way she thought. 3 days later, I received a cease and desist letter, gold-trimmed stationery, her name embossed at the top. It accused me of kidnapping Jill and interfering with a stable home environment. Brandon laughed. "Frame it," he said. "It's insane. But she's not playing around." Then something I didn't expect happened. My dad called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was hollow, like he hadn't spoken aloud in days. "I'm sorry," he said. "Things got out of hand. I didn't know what she was doing. She changed the locks." "What?" "She threw me out." He continued. "Said I was toxic to her healing journey, that I needed to maintain emotional boundaries or find somewhere else to sleep." He'd been staying at a motel, 3 miles from the house, with a suitcase and a cardboard box of his shoes. No one knew, not even Jill. Later that night, Jill told me something else. While she was still at the house, Heather had started bringing someone over. A guy, mid-30s, drove a white Tesla, smelled like eucalyptus and ambition. Jill said he'd stay overnight sometimes. She once saw them kissing in the backyard. That's when it all clicked. Heather had been playing the long game. She waited until Dad was emotionally, financially, and legally dependent. Then she replaced him, just like she replaced Mom, only this time faster, cleaner. But Dad never changed the deed to the house. I remembered helping him refinance 2 years ago. I saw the paperwork. His name was still the only one on the title. Heather had convinced him not to bother with the transfer, said it was just a formality. She pretended she wasn't materialistic. But she didn't marry him for love. She married him for real estate. I called Brandon. If she kicked him out without a legal claim, what is she? He didn't hesitate. A squatter. We made a plan. Not violent, not illegal, just bold. That weekend, Heather posted on Instagram about attending a sound bath ceremony. We waited until she was gone. Dad met us at the house. Still looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He stood on the porch holding a shoebox and a picture of me and Jill from 2003. We brought a locksmith, 3 copies of the deed, and a sheriff's deputy who owed Brandon a favor. The locks were changed in under 30 minutes. When Heather got back, she lost it. She screamed, really screamed, like something feral. She tried to kick the door. The deputy calmly explained that she didn't live there anymore. Not legally, not until a judge said otherwise. She cursed us all, called us cowards. Inside, Dad sat in his recliner. Jill curled up on the couch with headphones. And me? I stood by the door and thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the moment we finally start to heal. I was wrong, because Heather wasn't finished. Not even close. For about 5 minutes, everything was quiet. We ordered pizza, sat on the floor like a normal family, and pretended that reclaiming the house had solved something. Dad barely ate, kept glancing toward the window like Heather might fly in with a vengeance spell. Jill scrolled her phone in silence. And me, I felt numb, not proud, not vindicated, just tired. But that silence didn't last. 2 days later, I got another call from Dad's school. This time it wasn't about emergency contacts. It was about an investigation. Someone had filed an anonymous report claiming my father had engaged in inappropriate conduct with a student. No names, no dates, just smoke. Enough smoke to start a fire. They suspended him pending review. Dad was stunned, stammered when I told him, insisted it wasn't true. I believed him. My dad had flaws, many, but this wasn't one of them. That same day, Jill came downstairs holding something in both hands. Heather's old laptop. I found it. She said it was in the hall closet, still plugged in. It wasn't password protected. Heather had kept everything. Emails, screenshots, voice memos, folders with names like insurance, leverage, and exit plan. One note literally said final phase, contingencies. We found a document titled False Narrative Template Email. It was the exact phrasing used in the tip that got Dad suspended. We found the draft. She sent it from a fake account, posing as a concerned parent. Filed it with just enough detail to sound credible. My hands shook reading it. This wasn't pettiness. This was war. Then we found the real kicker, a draft email addressed to someone named Evan. You said once he'd break under pressure. He did. He's out. Job's next. Once the court accepts the domestic complaint, I can push for an emergency order. After that, we list the house, flip the story, and walk. She hadn't just turned on my dad, she was planning to erase him. Sell the house, pocket the money, leave. With Evan, I sent the evidence to Brandon. He nearly choked when he saw the email thread. This is calculated, he said. You're dealing with a full-blown sociopath. We immediately contacted Dad's school, asked for a temporary hold on the investigation, promised proof. Then Jill showed me something else. Heather had opened a storage unit in Dad's name. The bill had been forwarded to our house after we changed the locks. We went to see it. It was small, tidy, just a few boxes and a suitcase. Inside, more files, old credit card applications, documents from before she met Dad, fake IDs, multiple aliases, photoshopped driver's licenses. She wasn't just manipulative. She was a con artist. I copied everything, made 3 sets, one for Brandon, one for a friend out of town, one I kept locked in a safe. Then I dug deeper. Evan's full name was Evan Langley. He wasn't clean either. A sealed arrest for identity theft, a string of bankrupt LLCs, one for a tech wellness app that never existed. He'd conned people before. Heather and Evan weren't planning a fresh start. They were planning a heist. She'd already registered a new LLC, Silver Wave Living. The plan: transfer ownership of the house into the company's name, sell it, and vanish. All while claiming Dad had emotionally endangered her and needed to be removed. I waited until Heather left town again. Some yoga retreat. Then I struck. We printed everything. The fake email tip, the exit strategy, the LLC paperwork, photos from the storage unit. I sent one package to Dad's school, another to the IRS, one more to a former business associate of Evan's who'd been burned before. And the final copy, I left it on Heather's windshield. No note, no explanation. Just a manila envelope sealed tight with tape. 2 days later, she showed up at our door. Not screaming, not even angry, just smiling, like a queen who'd just been checkmated. She asked to speak to me. I stepped outside. She asked how much I knew, how much I'd seen. I said, enough. She laughed. You've grown sharp, she said. Didn't think you had it in you. Then, with genuine admiration in her eyes, she added, quick study, and left. The next morning, Evan's car was gone, towed from his apartment. By the afternoon, his name appeared on a fraud report. Heather had turned on him, tried to cut her losses, but it was too late. The judge denied her claim to the house. The restraining order stuck. She couldn't even drive down our street anymore. I thought that was the final act. The fall of Heather. I was wrong, because Heather had one last move, and this time she came after someone I didn't think she could touch. She came for my mother. Heather's last move was meant to be devastating. She filed a new lawsuit this time, not just against Dad, but against my mother as well. She claimed the two of them had hidden assets in a dormant joint account from their marriage. It had about $300 in it, forgotten, negligible, but that didn't matter. Heather painted it as proof of collusion, claimed they were sabotaging a legitimate domestic agreement to cheat her out of rightful support. It was desperate, but it forced my mom, who'd stayed far away from this mess, to come back into the fire. She had to testify, had to sit through hearings, had to listen to Heather describe her marriage like it was a criminal operation. And I was furious. But Heather couldn't have known what her final shot would really do, because it didn't destroy my parents. It reconnected them. At first, they were awkward, sitting on opposite sides of courtrooms, trading brief glances and nothing more. But then they started talking again. First about Jill, then about what had happened since the divorce, then about the years they lost. It wasn't romantic, not at first. It was shared survival. But I started noticing things. They stood closer. They laughed more easily. They didn't leave the room so quickly when the other walked in. After one hearing where Heather tried and failed to get a judge to freeze the house, Dad and Mom sat together outside the courthouse, sharing a cup of gas station coffee, in silence, like two people who knew exactly how much they'd been through. Meanwhile, Heather unraveled. The school cleared Dad of all charges, quietly but fully. Her lawsuit against Mom and me was thrown out. The LLC she'd set up was frozen by the IRS. And Evan, he vanished. No forwarding address, no lawyer, nothing. I'm guessing she turned him in herself, hoping to save what little she had left. But it was too late. The judge ruled she had no legal standing to the house. She tried to appeal, cried, accused, begged, but the evidence was too strong. Her restraining order stayed. She couldn't come within 500 feet of the property. And just like that, she was out. You'd think that was the end. But life isn't a movie. There was no closing credits moment. There was just healing. Slow, quiet, awkward, but real. Mom started staying late after visits, helping Jill with college applications, making dinners again. She wasn't back, but she wasn't gone either. And one night, I came by after work and saw her shoes at the door. The same shoes she wore when she used to hum in the kitchen, making Sunday dinner. No one said it out loud, no big announcement, but she'd come home. Not out of obligation, out of choice. Jill got into her dream school. When she left, she didn't leave angry or afraid, just hopeful, excited. She hugged Dad, hugged me, hugged Mom, said, "Don't mess this up, okay?" Then she left with a smile. Dad started therapy, real therapy. Not the kind Heather preached with crystal bowls and faux wisdom. He apologized one night, said he couldn't undo the damage, but he could stop it from continuing. It wasn't enough, but it was honest. And that meant more than I thought it would. And me, I stopped trying to fix everything. I stopped chasing old definitions of family. Because sometimes, when you clear out the rot, what's left isn't perfect, but it's real. And real is enough. As for Heather, she lost everything. The house, the reputation, the access, the narrative. We didn't see her again. Not until much later. A year passed. A whole quiet year. Then I got a letter. Real envelope, real stamp, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no signature. It read, "I thought I was playing a game, but I forgot you were learning the whole time. Congratulations, I underestimated you." That was it. No name. But I didn't need one. I tossed the letter into the trash, made coffee, and sat outside. And I thought about the version of me from years ago, the one who sent money with shaking hands, praying for scraps of love in return. He wouldn't recognize me now, and that's a good thing.